Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamunatiya Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kuja Bihari Shubhad Brahmahamsa Parivajikacharya Sotar Sata His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srila Sadhguru Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki, Yamuna Mai Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Tulsi Devi Ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki, Nektaraj Shima Bhagavatam Ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki, Nitai Gaur Pranandi. All glories to Simul devotees. All glories to Simul devotees. All glories to Simul devotees. All glories to Shri Guru Ranga, glories to Shri Lavanga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nastupareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Respectful basis unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supervised human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised but transcendental songs, is established as irrevocable fact. Alright. So, we're maybe in the last 13 texts of our chapter here. We're doing chapter 22 of Canto 4, titled Prithvi Maharaj's Meeting with the Kumaras. And we've just previously heard Prithvi Maharaj glorifying the four Kumaras. And now, as the chapter is concluding, we're going to hear about the glories of Prithvi Maharaj himself. And this is beneficial because when we hear about the glories of great souls, then we can understand their qualities and we can understand how an actual self-realized person behaves, and in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We learn about their qualities and so forth. It's not just, okay, well, this is a list of things great devotees do, but we actually see this played out. And so, therefore, when we come across a saintly person, we're able to recognize them because we've studied the character of great saints in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course, with that said, we're all kind of developing, we're all works in progress. So, of course, most devotees that we meet, they'll have many of these qualities, maybe in a little bit lesser degree to Prithvi Maharaj, maybe on the same level as Prithvi Maharaj, but this is kind of what we're all striving for. So, text 49. Vanyastu Duro Mahatam Samstityad Shikshaya Akta Kaman Ivatmanam Minan Atman Yavasita Vanyasudra Mahat Vanyasudra Mahatam Samstitya Dhyatma Shikshaya Apta Kamani Vatmanam Mera Atman Yavastita Vanyastudro Mahatam Samstitya Dhyatma Shikshaya Apta Kamani Vatmanam Menam Atman Avastita. Please chant. Okay, word for word. Vanyaha, the son of Vena Maharaj. Prithu, two, of course. Doryaha, the chief. Mahatam, of great personalities. Stamsitya, being completely fixed. Adhyatma Shikshaya, in the matter of self-realization. Abda, achieve. Kamam, desires. Iva, like. Atmanam, in self-satisfaction. Mine, considered. Atmani, in the self. Avastita, situated. Translation. Amongst great personalities, Maharaj Prithu was the chief by virtue of his fixed position in relation to spiritual enlightenment. He remained satisfied as one who has achieved all success in spiritual understanding. Please repeat. Amongst great personalities, Maharaj Prithu was the chief by virtue of his fixed position in relation to spiritual enlightenment. He remains satisfied as one who has achieved all success in spiritual understanding. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Remaining fixed in devotional service gives one the utmost in self-satisfaction. Actually, self-satisfaction can be achieved only by pure devotees who have no desire other than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to desire, he is fully satisfied with himself. Similarly, A devotee who has no desire other than to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead is as self-satisfied as the Supreme Lord. Everyone is hankering after peace of mind and self-satisfaction, but these can only be achieved by becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. King Prithu's statements in previous verses regarding his vast knowledge and perfect devotional service are justified here. He is considered best amongst all Mahatmas. In Bhagavad Gita 9:13, Shri Krishna speaks of Mahatmas in this way. Mahatmanas tu mam parta, Devi prakritim ashritya, vajat ananya manaso gyatva buddhatim abhyagam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible spiritual energy. Because of this, the real Mahatma is always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Prithu Maharaj exhibited all the symptoms of a Mahatma. Therefore, he is mentioned in this verse as Duryo Mahatam, best of the Mahatmas. Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishram Sthapitam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupakiramayam Didati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shita Parakamaham Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sariratam Sahakana Raganaptam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Prajnana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Shah Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopi Shakapika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapte Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripe Pancha Kalpatrupeshcha Kripa Sindhu Bevicha Patisnam Pavne Vyoba Shami Vilon Mamaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, this is the first text in the glorification of Maharaj Prithu. And here, Prabhupada makes this statement in this purport that remaining fixed in devotional service gives one the utmost in self-satisfaction. And he goes on to say at the end of this paragraph that everyone is hankering after peace of mind and self-satisfaction, but these can only be achieved by becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. So one of the first things that we learn about Prithu Maharaj here is that he's completely fixed in devotional service. And why is it that devotional service gives the utmost in self-satisfaction? And I was listening to a lecture by Prabhupada yesterday. And Prabhupada, he always puts things, just very simply, like as matter of factly. And it's not complicated, it's straight and it's to the point. They say Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple and complicated for the complicated. So Prabhupada was just putting it very straight that as living entities, you can't get away from the position of being servants. Just in the same way as like sugar is sweet. Sugar cannot be not sweet. If it ceases to be sweet, it's no longer sugar, it becomes salt or something. Like, I remember one time we had a cake baking contest and somebody put salt in the cake instead of sugar. And it had a very bad taste to it. It just wasn't the same. So, in the same way, we cannot escape from this position of serving something. And I never really thought about this, prior to coming to Christian consciousness, that, you have to be a servant. Because we don't think of serving the body or serving the mind as service until someone points it out. But how many of you have been in the bed at nights? You're comfortable, you're sleeping, everything's nice, and you have to go to the bathroom. It's the worst thing, right? And so sometimes maybe you'll try to go back to sleep because you're like, I'll go later. But you can't sleep in the same way. And so you have to get up and you have to go to the bathroom. Sometimes this is service to the body. You can't escape that. Just like if I were to have to go to the bathroom right now, I had to get up and I wouldn't be able to finish the Bhagavatam class. I would have to go. There are certain situations like that. In the same way, we have to eat. So you ever seen situations where people are out in the wild? They get hungry enough, they'll eat anything. And a lot of times people have this idea of, I eat this, I don't eat that. But when you start starving to death, your values and your morals might go out the window and you just jump into survival. Like the Argentine, I think, rugby team or something. They were in a plane crash over the Andes and they were stuck for 72 days and they ended up resorting to cannibalism. And they were very strict Catholics. So they had this idea that if we engage in this, we're going to go to hell. But after a few days, that kind of went out the window because they really wanted to survive. So in many ways, you can't get out of serving the body. Just like you can't get out of serving your children or your family. If one really wants to see what it's like to be a selfless servant, have children. Because you're having to get up with them at nights. You have to feed them. You have to maintain them. And you don't get told thank you. In many ways, it's much more blissful to serve Guru Maharaj than it is to serve children. So just like this, there's always something we have to serve. So yesterday, I was I'm part of a Bhagavatam class on Mondays, and we all take turns leading. So yesterday it was my turn, and we're on the second canto. And we're on the part where it's describing the Virat Rupa, or the universal form of Krishna. So this Virat Rupa, the text that we were discussing, it was talking about how the feet of the Lord are like the lower planetary systems. And Prabhupada's making the point in this purport that this form is helpful for those people who can't really accept a form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They're more impersonalists. And it's also helpful for those who can see God in nature, or they have some respect for nature, like lightning and trees and whatnot. But Prabhupada also makes the point that unless one actually engages in service, the realization of the Virat Rupa, it has very little effect. And this is because once you have that realization, you have nothing to do. It's like if you go to a tropical island. I remember when I first moved to Florida when I was a teenager, and I first moved to, let me back up. I first moved to Panama City Beach, like in middle school. And so we had this apartment right on the beach, and it was very beautiful. And I would wake up every day and I would look out my window and I would see the ocean. And I would go out on the beach a lot and, just have fun. But after some time, I was thinking, what do I do? What's my purpose? What's my activity? Because at the time I couldn't enroll in school because the school year was about to end. So they just told me, okay, you'll start the next semester. And so I was kind of just sitting there, and it was great for about 2 weeks. But then after that, I was like, I have to do something. So in the same way, spiritual life, unless one actually engages in some service, then ultimately they just kind of go back to doing whatever they were doing before. I've seen people that have joined different ashrams, and they'll sit and they'll meditate for hours. But then after a few weeks of doing that, or sometimes even after a couple of years of doing that, they're like, I have to do something else. I have to engage in some other activity. Just like I met someone, I can't remember what they were practicing. Maybe it was Buddhism or something. And they were spending hours doing this meditation and did it for years, lived a very renounced life. But that was all they were doing pretty much all day, was sitting down and kind of meditating, not really engaging in any sort of activity. And after a few years, they ended up taking a very degraded profession. I mean, basically just gave up all this and went back to this very degraded lifestyle that they had before, basically because they said, I just got bored. I needed something to do. So Krishna consciousness is a very sweet process because it gives one service. We can see that even great yogis, if they don't have this service, they get distracted. Just like I've told the story of Savari Muni. He was meditating underwater for so many years. And he got very powerful. But then he got distracted when he saw two fish mating. And he thought, okay, I need to go get a wife. So then he goes to the king. And he wants to marry one of the king's daughters. But he's all ugly because he's been meditating for so long and hasn't really upkept his body. So the king tries to say to him very diplomatically, okay, well, I let my daughters choose their own husband. So he used his yogic potency to make him very handsome. And then after that, all the king's daughters wanted to marry him. So he ended up with, I think, like 50 wives. And then he used another part of his yogic potency to manifest this big palace that was more opulent than the king's so that he could maintain them all. But at the end of it, he still didn't have any satisfaction. But he had to leave that position of being a yogi because he was looking for some type of activity. So we see here that Maharaj Prithu, it said that he remained fixed in devotional service and he was self-satisfied. So if we look at Maharaj Prithu, what does this mean to be fixed in devotional service? Look at the life of Maharaj Prithu, and we could see that he didn't join the temple, and he didn't join the brahmacharya ashram, and he wasn't sitting around all day and reading Bhagavatam and chanting Hare Krishna. Sometimes people can have this idea, there's this idea, oh, this is a full-time devotee, this is not a full-time devotee. But we see here Maharaj Prithu, he was a full-time devotee, but he was running the whole entire planet. Because at this time, we can see that the king of the earth, they weren't just ruling a country, but they were ruling a planet. So Maharaj Prithu, he had all the services of a king. And that wasn't easy. If any of you have been in management, you know that managing a temple is not easy. I've been on trips with devotees where I've had to manage the money, manage the treasury. And let me tell you, just that one aspect wasn't easy because people are coming to you and they're like, okay, I need money for this. Okay, I need money for that. You have a certain budget, so you kind of have to be able to accommodate everyone and at the same time not spend too much of Krishna's money. So that wasn't easy. So what to speak of trying to run the whole entire world? So Maharaj Prithu, he had this administration to run. He had citizens to look after. And also in this day, people could come directly and complain to the king. Just like we see in the Krishna book, when there's that Brahmana that loses his children. And therefore he goes to the king and he blames the king, because when his children were born, they died immediately. And he thought it was the king's fault. So he's going to the king and he's blaming the king. So kings had a lot to put up with. And Maharaj Prithu had a lot to run. We're not hearing so much about the background of this because the main point of Bhagavatam is to give one instructions on devotional service. But Maharaj Prithu was also having to live life and be a devotee. And we can see in this time the Kshatriyas, they had to fight battle. A lot of times to have a descendant was really important because a lot of the kings would die in war. And so they needed a successor. So life wasn't necessarily easy. And sometimes we can read about this and we think, oh, these kings might be in some utopian society. It's not necessarily like that. Prabhupada mentioned one time when he was talking about this idea of a Krishna conscious city, he was mentioning that there will always be a certain section of society that wants to engage in sinful activity. And so he's saying, okay, so therefore there can be some area for them because they're going to do these things no matter what. And so we see in Kali Yuga that the majority of the population, I don't want to say the majority because I don't know all the statistics, but it's known as the age of cruel and hypocrisy. So we can see that religion is kind of on the downcline, morality is on the downcline. But you had a little bit of this in every age. Just like in Satya Yuga, where it said that people are very pious, they still had Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. I mean, those were pretty big demons. So in the material world, you never have a situation where everything is perfect. But still, people have things they have to do to maintain themselves. They have duties. But despite all that, we see here that Prithu Maharaj, he found a way to remain fixed in devotional service. Prabhupada also gave the example of Arjuna in one of his lectures. He said, Arjuna wasn't a brahmachari. Arjuna was a family man. He was a military man. And he had to do very difficult things. He had to fight, this great war in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. And then his brother Yudhishthira had to take over the kingdom and rule. And that was a tough situation. So, but we see here that what's the difference? Sometimes we have this idea, okay, this is my material life, this is my spiritual life. But the great souls, the great devotees, the difference is that their consciousness is different. Maharaj Prithu, you see, he has the 4 Kumaras coming. They came because they were attracted to his instructions. But what was Maharaj Prithu doing prior to the 4 Kumaras coming? He was giving his citizens encouragement and instructions on the process of devotional service, trying to help them make spiritual advancement. Because he wasn't seeing this kingdom as an object of his own sense gratification. And one of the interesting things that this verse brings out is, what do they call Prithu Maharaj? Vanyaha, son of Vena. And what do we know about Vena? Is that he was very irreligious. He stopped all the Brahmas for doing sacrifices. He wasn't Krishna conscious. He was ruling with a very, dictatorial hand and oppressing the citizens and such. But Maharaj Prithu, we can see the contrast. Maharaj Prithu, his consciousness is different. He's thinking, these citizens, they're my responsibility, but they're not mine. They're Krishna's. Just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in a prayer, that's whatever I have, family, children, home, these all belong to you, Krishna. I am using them for your service. So the difference here is the consciousness of the devotee. The devotee does their duty. Maybe they rule the planets, like Prithu Maharaj. Of course, nowadays you can't rule the planet. You can maybe rule a country. Or in your own small way, as somebody pointed out in a lecture one time, in your own small way, everyone has some influence. So everyone can create some Krishna conscious influence within their own environment. And this is what Maharaj Prithu is doing on a bigger scale. He's seeing this situation in the world. These citizens are my responsibility. So therefore, he's trying to create a situation in which everyone can make spiritual advancement. It wasn't that everyone's making spiritual advancement because everything is perfect. I mean, these citizens were just traumatized from the rule of Vena. So even in a varnashram society, there are problems. But because the devotee has this consciousness that they just want to please Krishna, they're able to be self-satisfied. Because as Krishna tells Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, you have a right to do your duty, but you're not entitled to the result. So the devotee acts for Krishna, but the result of the activity, that's left up to Krishna. So it is said, we should endeavor, like everything depends on us, but we should at the same time know and pray The result of this ultimately depends on Krishna. I'm not the controller. So Maharaj Prithu, he's just doing his part in the world, doing his part, trying to help the citizens. As it said, as Prabhupada mentioned in a lecture that I read last week, that in a society, the king is just whatever the religion is, the king is trying to make sure people are following. If they're Muslim, if they're Christian, whatever, the king is trying to make sure that people are just following that properly. He's not trying to, control them. You have to do things my way. But so Maharaj Prithu, seeing the need for God consciousness in society, he's helping the citizens in this way. But later we're going to see in the next chapter that he's going to renounce and he's going to come back to Godhead. Because at the same time, the pure souls, they know that whatever duty I have in this world, I'm doing it for Krishna, but ultimately it's temporary and I have to give it up. So therefore, the idea that it doesn't belong to me eternally, it belongs to someone else. It gives some sense of peace. Just like I had a friend one time, he had a job at a bank and it was in another country. So they deal more with cash. And so his boss gave him a big briefcase of money. I'm not exactly sure how much it was, but he said, I had enough money in my hands that I would be set up for the rest of my life. And my job was to take it from point A to point B. And as I was walking, I realized this is a lot of money and this could change my life. But he said, I knew that this money didn't belong to me. It belonged to someone else. So a pure devotee is peaceful. Pure devotee is fixed in this way because they're understanding my duty ultimately this belongs to Krishna. I'm doing this for Krishna. My body doesn't belong to me. As Lord Chaitanya told Sanatana Goswami, when he was thinking at one point, there was some situation in Chaitanya Charitamrita where he was thinking, I will go to Jagannath Puri and I will commit suicide. And Lord Chaitanya told him, your body does not belong to you. Your body belongs to me. And I have many things that I want to do through you. And so, therefore, a devotee is able to be peaceful because they understand, okay, I'm doing this for Krishna now. And when Krishna wants me to do something else, I'll do something else. And in this way, it's different from the materialist. A devotee can be in any position and be satisfied. We see in the third canto that Kardama Muni, he had this great, great palace, 7 stories that was able to fly. And he went and he was flying around the universe with Devahuti and they were enjoying it various ways. But when the time came, he was able to just give all that up and go on to his next thing in devotional service. But for one who is not engaged in this process of devotional service, there's anxiety. Because whatever I obtain, even if I get something great by seemingly my hard work, there's some fear that I might lose it. Even we can see Indra. He's the king of heaven. He has so much opulence. But even he gets an anxiety over losing it. The Asuras are going to come and they're going to attack us and they're going to take everything. We see he has so much, but still there's that whole pastime of him becoming lusty after Gautama's wife. Indra has a beautiful wife. Indra has so many things. But still, when one forgets who everything belongs to, then there's this, okay, I have to get more. Because the mind's job is to always try to look for something kind of better than what I have, or to think I can find something better than what I have. We always think the grass is going to be greener on the other side. But actually, it's really not. It goes through this constant process of accepting and rejecting. Now I have this, now I've enjoyed this, now this is all, now I want to go enjoy something else. So you'll see people that become, great millionaires, great billionaires, they're always looking for the next big thing. They never reach a position where they're satisfied. And then you see they get these big homes, and when they get these big homes, what do? They immediately put gates in front of the home, and they get dogs and everything to try and protect what they already have, while at the same time they're trying to get more. So also an example of this we can see in Shastra too is Ravana. Ravana, he had a great kingdom, and he had so many wives, and his brother Vishnu was telling him, you have so many wives, you have enough, just be happy, give Sita back to Ram. But no, he had to go after Sita, and therefore that led to his downfall. So this is what happens. We can see that during this process, if you read Ramayana, it describes the opulence that Ravana had. I mean, it was incredible. It was like unlike anything you would actually see today. And still, he was frustrated. Still, he was in this anxiety. Still, he was, he was trying to figure out how to get Sita. And then when he got Sita, he was all upset that he couldn't control Sita and that Sita wouldn't surrender to him. And that Sita was devoted to Ram. We see the same thing with Hiranyakashipu. He conquered everything, but he still was very upset that he couldn't control Prahlad. So when one's consciousness is fixed in what can I attain for myself, how can I make myself prosperous, it's very much like a trap, because there's always going to be something that doesn't completely materially satisfy one. But when one has this idea, okay, I'm just wanting to please Krishna, then one is peaceful because one is doing this service for Krishna, and Krishna is reciprocating with them in the heart, and this relationship is developing. And therefore, that gives a sense of self-satisfaction and happiness. We can see that Prabhupada, studying the life of Srila Prabhupada, he had so many plans. And even in India, he had this whole League of Devotees. And he even had a whole list of how the whole program was supposed to go. I think many of you have read it. It basically involved waking up, chanting, Mangalarti, chanting, eating, chanting, taking more prasadam, chanting. So he had this, whole idea. Okay, I'm going to start Krishna consciousness here, get some money, later go to the West. We see that didn't work out. It's not that all of Prabhupada's ideas worked out, but he was able to remain peaceful because the thing was, okay, Krishna, this didn't work. Now where do you want me to go? But we can see that when we're really attached to something, what happens when we get in the mode of passion, when we're wanting to attain something for ourselves and we don't get it, then it's frustration. And then we go down into ignorance. Then there's lamentation, there's illusion, there's I'm lying in my bed for 3 weeks eating ice cream because I didn't get what I want. You see people like this. It's not really a joke. I mean, people who just sit in their homes and they're frustrated and they're depressed because something didn't work out the way they wanted it to, or they lost something that they thought they had achieved, like a lady I ran into who worked for United Airlines for 30 years and was about to retire. But something happened in that company. I think somebody had stolen some money. She lost her retirement. Her and several other people didn't get the retirement. So in her 60s, she had to start working as a taxi cab driver. And she was really depressed because she had spent all this time trying to make this endeavor. Thinking I'm saving up all this money, and then later I'm going to retire, later I'm going to enjoy. But it didn't happen in that way. But see, the beautiful thing about devotional service is even if one way something doesn't work out, I'm trying to serve Krishna this way and that doesn't work out, Krishna always has another plan. He's like, I don't want you going this way, but going this way. And then you see, okay, I'm really happy that didn't work out back there. Just think if the League of Devotees had been really prosperous in India, and things have been really booming, would Srila Prabhupada really have felt the urge to come here? He might have been torn. Okay, no, things are going really good here. Should I go to the West? Or if he had a wife that he really, really liked, So these situations in Krishna consciousness, even sometimes you go through a disappointing situation, if the mind is fixed on, okay, what does Krishna want me to do? Then it's not as disappointing because Krishna wants something else. But if it's fixed on ourselves, then we get disappointed because we're attached to what we personally are trying to get. And sometimes, our ego is involved in that. I've worked so hard for this, I've worked so hard for that, and now I think I'm entitled to this or I think I'm entitled to that. But so the Srimad Bhagavatam it's showing us, if we just twitch our consciousness a little bit, how this self-satisfaction can really be achieved. And I've seen it personally. Devotees, when their mind is really that way, they're chill no matter what's going on. And sometimes we might have these situations in Krishna consciousness where we feel a little bit disappointed, but sometimes you really don't understand how far you've come until you step outside a little bit. And I remember when I went home and see my family, and they have every single streaming service you could think of. And they actually, I don't understand why somebody would pay this much money for all of it. And they have everything you could think of. And we went to a movie, and we're sitting in a movie, and I'm thinking, oh, this is nice. This place has air conditioning. The popcorn's pretty good. The chairs are pretty comfortable. And the kids that were with us, my nephew and others, my sister, they were starting complaining. I'm like, why are they complaining? Because the seats don't recline. And at the theater across the bridge, they have seats that are reclining. You can put your feet up and whatnot. And that idea never crossed my mind. And that's when you go heavy into this sense gratification for yourself. You're always thinking, okay, I gotta have a higher standard. I gotta have more. Just like when they brought me something to drink, they're like, do you want ice? Nobody's asked me if I wanted ice in forever. I've been drinking drinks without ice in the temple for so many years. Never thought I need ice. But if you bring one of them a drink without ice, it's like the worst thing in the world. No, I don't get hot. and then I noticed even just getting dinner. My mom was going to the store, and then my son's like, I want Taco Bell. And my nephew's like, I want Chick-fil-A. And my mom says, Lacey, what do you want for dinner? I said, we're already going to the store. Just pick me up, this, and I'll cook it. And she's like, oh, no, but if you want me to go somewhere else, I'll go somewhere else. I'm like, no, I don't need you to go somewhere else. You're going here. It's fine. But because they're so accustomed to this, just trying to get everything they want. I see my mom, my grandmother, they're just to get dinner, they're running in 3 or 4 different locations because people want 3 or 4 different things. And here you see that breakfast will come, we'll eat rice, we'll eat dal, we'll eat sabji, and everybody's okay. So in Krishna consciousness, you have this level of just satisfaction because the mind is not fixed on what can I gain from me. So therefore, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, by the process of Krishna consciousness, one gets happiness and one gets peace. Yeah. So therefore, then I was able to learn, I was able to understand that, okay, I might not be this pure devotee, but wow, I can see how my consciousness has definitely changed from the time that I've actually taken up this process of devotional service compared to how things were before. And sometimes you don't really realize the trap that one can get into with the material nature until you actually go associate with materialistic persons. And you can see that there's no satisfaction. They don't have enough. And they're always thinking of what can we do next. Just like they had 2 condos and they were thinking, okay, we'll sell these 2 and then we'll buy a bigger one. There's all these plans for how to increase things. They can't just stop and chill out for a second and be like, okay, we're good, we have enough. My nephew was like, I go into his room, there's a flat screen TV, there's an Xbox, there's a PlayStation. And he's telling me, oh, for my birthday, I'm getting a gaming computer. I'm gonna put it over here. So and there's whatever you have, it's not enough. I was like, you guys are never satisfied. You have more in here than any kid could actually want. And then my son apparently made really good grades for his first year in high school, so I was super proud of him. And then my mom came to me and she said, okay, we got to figure out how to get Kason's computer. And because Ryan did really good in school this year, I promised him if he made all A's, I'd buy him a car. So now we got to figure out how to get him a car. I was like, wow, you guys, it never ends. It's like madness. It's ridiculous. And then I felt really grateful for this process of Krishna consciousness because I thought, I don't have a car. I don't have a gaming computer. actually technically don't even have a computer. I just have like a little iPad, kind of for my services, and a simple phone. It's not the latest iPhone. Actually, that's another thing. They all had better iPhones than I did, but yet I don't feel like I need anything else until something breaks. Because I'm trying to think of how can I please Krishna? What does Krishna want me to do next? And I feel happy and I feel satisfied. So that's what Krishna consciousness can actually give you. And we see here with Prithu Maharaj again, even though he had all this responsibility, he was self-satisfied and he was peaceful because of where his consciousness was at. So, are there any questions or comments? Yes.
Considering that devotional service, we have more in one sense because we're filling up with something spiritual. That's also a reason why we don't feel neglected materially, because there's something else filling us. And so that's why with Prabhupada was so compassionate, because he could see that these people were feeling an emptiness and a lacking. So they're trying to, like you say, they're trying to fill it up with anything they can think of, but it doesn't matter how hard they try. They never can fill it up because they're trying to put the wrong kind of gasoline in the car. It doesn't fill them because they are really spirit soul and they need spiritual fulfillment, not material fulfillment. So, you've seen it yourself, and we all have, that people, our own family members, they see us that we're satisfied and happy, but somehow there's no bells going off that, oh, why is she not doing what we're doing? So Prabhupada gave us this taste, and with that taste, then we're able to give up all these other things. But it's not that it can be done materially. We have to do it on a spiritual platform.
Yeah, and it's like Bhagavad Gita is talking about when one gets a higher taste, they're able to give up the lower taste. And this isn't just applies to people who are studying Srimad Bhagavatam, but I even saw in the Dominican Republic, my future mother-in-law is a devout Christian. So we always make this joke every day that she's playing her Christian kirtan, because she has like the Christian, like the Spanish Christian music playing all day, and she's listening to lectures of like various her preacher. So we always say that's her Guru Maharaj. I mean, there's just the sound vibrations reverting throughout the day, and she's in a place where electricity will go on and off. You can't drink the water out of the tap, or it actually will kill you. Unlike we say here, oh, this tap water is not good, but if we had to drink it for a week, we probably wouldn't die. But they're they don't really have like the same standard of sense gratification. But I can see she's like totally self-satisfied. She's like, I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to do anything. It's like I have everything I need here. So we can see it doesn't just apply to Krishna consciousness, but whoever is actually following their religious process, and it's a bona fide process, they get this self-satisfaction in any situation. And maybe you guys have had also similar experiences where you come to Krishna consciousness and you get self-satisfied, because like Nectar Devotion talks about, one of the first things that happens when one takes up this process is freedom from material miseries. So is there anything else? Any realizations? Yes, sir? Well, in that case, it's about time for breakfast. So I see them bringing it out now. So, Dr. Raj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki